Australia and New Zealand, and then suddenly everyone's coming in from Glasgow. I can't believe it. And Sangharakshita over there from Germany, fantastic. Oh. Yes, hi, Dan. Sudaya, my goodness, there you are. Yes. Hi, hello, Cynthia. Great news, fantastic news. Yeah. My name's Saddhanandi, and I'm currently chair at Adhisthana, so I'm just here to welcome you all to the Adhisthana Shrine Room. We'll salute the shrine in a few minutes, once everyone's arrived. Yeah, welcome to Tri Ratna Day. For some of you, I know have already had a bit of a celebration, and for some of you, you're getting up very early to say hello here, so welcome. Here at Adhisthana, we've got a very dark night sky and half a moon. I'm assuming you've all had a half moon, and you've got quite different conditions, like a lovely day, maybe sunshine and warm, balmy temperatures. Yes, I'm not jealous, it's all right. Oh, Sila Badra, lovely to see you there. Yeah, it's really great. We're doing so much, we're reading through so many of those transcriptions of those seminars, and I think of you a lot whenever I open the book. Yeah, yeah. Hi, Sonia from Germany, very good to see you. Yeah. We were on a retreat just finished 2 days ago, so it's very good to suddenly see them back here on screen. So on a Saturday morning, yeah, very good. Hridaya, lovely, good. Yes. Come and say hello. Right, so Shivayu has got to come now and say hello to you now, I'm afraid.
Hello.
Oh, there she is.
Hi, Hridaya. Lovely to see you. Hey.
Yeah.
Cynthia, Sudaya, lovely to see you.
All right, enough.
Oh yeah, enough. I'm being sent off. Bye.
And Vajrajyoti's there. She seems to have developed a fourth arm. Yes.
Come
and say hello. The one with the tail.
Hi. Sangadarshini, hello.
You want to stay here?
Can I stay here with you?
Yeah, you can stay here with me. Okay.
Okay, I'll leave you there.
She's more scary sitting further away than when she's sitting next to me, but anyway, let's salute the shrine. So we'll just salute the shrine here at Adhisthana. Namo Buddhaya.
Namo Buddhaya.
Namo Dhammaya.
Namo Dhammaya.
Namo Sanghaya.
Namo Sanghaya.
Namo Namah.
Namo Namah.
Om.
Om.
Ahum. Yeah, so welcome to Tri Ratna Day and to the Adhisthana Shrine Room. My name is Saddhanandi and I'm currently chair but we've got another 6 people in the shrine room, a lot of people on tech, cameras, and people also chanting in the right place, which is great. And here it is 5 o'clock in the morning at Adhisthana. So I can't believe some of the people I've got in this room, actually. I've never seen them up quite so early. Yeah, so today's Tri Ratna Day, and I know some of you are already most of the way through it, but here we're just starting. And it's the anniversary of Bhante founding Tri Ratna, founding our Buddhist movement on the 7th of April 1967. And we're starting our Tri Ratna celebrations over here with connecting up with New Zealand and right on the other side of the world, actually, the furthest away. So we're kind of coming from one of the newest Tri Ratna institutions, if you like, that is Adhisthana. And then we're going to be in partnership with, particularly with Auckland and those in New Zealand, which is one of the oldest centres, actually one of the oldest sanghas that we've got here, and right on the other side of the world. So the rest of the day here, Tri Ratna Day, is starting with this session over here, and we're going to be continuing for the next 18 hours with 6 different sessions, which will hopefully chime with convenient times throughout the world. And it's very appropriate to start it here maybe with this beautiful shrine at Adhisthana. We've got this rupa, this very big rupa. We've now got the same rupa, or almost the same rupa, standing at our gateway. So that's the first thing that people see. And it's been surprising who has come to Adhisthana just because they've seen that rupa and had a look around here. So we've got this big Buddha figure, and then surrounding him is the aura of all the small rupas that have been given to us when the centre here was dedicated. So I think that was 6 or 7 years ago. And in some ways, Adhisthana exists, well, it only exists because of the aura of the Buddhist movement that's surrounding us. It only exists because of the international community kind of needing a little bit of a focus, and this shrine hopefully will provide something of that focus for all of us. Yeah. So the rupas, the Buddhas in these little niches, have all been given to us by centres, the Auckland Centre, different chapters, different projects. I think the last one that was given to us was from Buddhafield, which was maybe 18 months ago, when we were allowed to have people on site. Yeah. So I thought we'd just start with a very small clip of Sangharakshita and myself talking about him setting up the movement. This was an interview I did with Bhante maybe 2-3 years before he died. Let me think, is that true? On his 90th year. And we were discussing various objects of his life, and we were discussing this signboard that he used to have outside the shop where he opened his first meditation class. So we'll just hear him describe that occasion.
With the signboard and the time that you spent in that particular shop, in the basement of that shop, Sakura. Say a little bit about your time there.
Well, as you described, that's the signboard of the shop Sakura, the Japanese shop. The proprietor was by that time a friend, and the shop had a basement. After my return to this country, I decided that we needed a new Buddhist movement. I started holding meditation classes in the basement of that shop. The shop was very centrally situated, being in Monmouth Street, and people were constantly passing by. So it was very easy for the proprietor to put a notice in the window about meditation classes being held there. And we used to get inquiries. So in that way, we did recruit quite a few people. The basement was quite small. It couldn't really accommodate more than 20 people at a time. And of course, in those days, people didn't sit cross-legged for meditation. but they had to be very small chairs. Initially, I held a class a week, but then there was an increasing demand, and I was holding 2. And of course, after a year of these classes, it was in that same basement that, one by one, the private ordinations were held of the first members. The public ordinations were held at a centre called Centre House. I'd been giving lectures also at that same place, Centre House, so it was already quite familiar to us. So 14 Monastery occupies a quite important place. I'm pleased that we still have that old signboard with someone rescued from somewhere. I don't know the whole story.
Yeah, so that was quite early on in my getting to know Sangharakshita through all those interviews, and he could often be very lively in those interviews and be quite cheeky back to me, and he would love me to be, well, gradually we developed quite a rapport, and I remember him saying, I'd say to him, do you want to know what I'm going to say in this interview? He said, no, just surprise me, Saddhanandi, like that. He just loved that sort of spontaneity and just thinking very quickly on his feet, which he could do very well. Yeah. So that was him talking about those early classes and setting up that centre. And you really get a sense when you read his letters of him just doing absolutely everything, making the tea, sorting out the chairs, arranging the shrine, welcoming people. Well, everything that a centre team now does, Bhante was doing at some point. And I've got these various little bits of quotes actually of him travelling to New Zealand and to Auckland. I think he made maybe 2 trips to Auckland, but he went quite soon after the movement was started. He had such a vision actually for an international community, such a vision for how important it was that the Dharma reached a lot of different countries. And I think he saw it as, not only did he see that it was important for the Dharma to go to other countries, but he also saw it was important for us as individuals to engage with the international community. He knew that was going to be a stretch for us each individually. So he made that kind of demand on us that we would continually move through our conditioning and meet other people in their conditioning. And something more universal would happen out of that. Yeah. So I'll just read you a little extract from his preface to the little book, Human Enlightenment. And these lectures that you see in the book, Human Enlightenment, were given in 1975. So here he is talking. The lectures were given in the town hall in Auckland on the 6th, 13th and 20th of February 1975, under the auspices of the Friends of the Western Buddhist Order. I had arrived in New Zealand 3 months earlier, and in the course of at that time had conducted meditation classes at the FWO centres in Auckland and Christchurch, besides leading retreats in various places. FWO activities had started in New Zealand as long ago as 1970 to 71, when Dharmachari Akshobhya started holding meditation classes in Auckland, and Lin Pao Chen began playing the tapes of my lectures in Christchurch. Now, 4 or 5 years later, the movement had gathered sufficient momentum for 9 or 10 people to want to commit themselves to the 3 jewels, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, as Dharmachari and Dharmacharini members of the Western Buddhist Order. And it was largely in response to their request that I decided to visit New Zealand. The first batch of ordinations had, in fact, been held 2 months earlier, so that when I gave my lectures, there was already a presence of the order in New Zealand, and thus, it was hoped, a firm basis for the future development of the movement in that country. Yeah. I've got many other things I could read out, but I think we should move on because I've got to move over to Auckland myself now. So let's go there. We're going to go over to Ratnavyuha, and it's going to take over from me and introduce us from right over there on the other side of the road, other side of the world, which I can't quite believe. Very nice to see Ratnavyuha. Yeah, so Ratnavyuha, I had a quick conversation with Shubhavyuha 12 hours ago, and I know him a little bit myself, but I wanted to get a few more details, some of which I'm not going to repeat. And but it's very good to see you here. And I know that he's now a member of the college, the public preceptors, and he works alongside Ratnadharani as one of her chair's deputies. I also know that we could do a whole program on Ratnavyuha and it would still be very international, with him being American and then moving to Britain and working for Windhorse Trading or Windhorse Evolution, then moving to Sydney, working in Sydney, and now in Auckland. And he is a real jewel and an exemplar of our Buddhist community. So welcome to Adhisthana and welcome to Ratnavyuha.
Thanks, Saddhanandi. Yes, so welcome to Auckland, New Zealand. I'm just in my office at the moment, but it's fall going into winter here. So we've just had a really lovely blue sky, blue day. We're not in lockdown, so at the moment at least, and it was really lovely to hear Sangharakshita, Bhante's voice in that excerpt from the interview that Saddhanandi did with him. It was nice to hear him. So what we've got to start the program here in New Zealand is that we've got 3 people that are going to share with you. So we're going to start with Shraddanitta in Wellington, who's going to do a dedication. And then we're going to have some reflections from Ujjalamati, who's in Thames. And then we're going to finish with some reflections from Purna. And so, as you know, the Dharma, as it moves around the world, it's always had to speak the language of the people it's met, and it's wanted to, because it's wanted to be able to speak to them in their lives and help them to take the Dharma into their life. And so, out here in both Australia and New Zealand, actually, a lot of times when we do dedication ceremonies, we will make them a bit New Zealand-ish. And so I'm going to pass you on to Shraddanitta now, who's going to do a little bit of an introduction to you, and then going to lead us in a dedication from New Zealand. So Shraddanitta, you're in the Wellington Buddhist Center.
Yep. Wonderful.
Great.
Thank you very much, Ratnavyuha. Okay. No mai, haere mai. Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Hello, lovely peeps, and welcome to the Tri Ratna Day celebration coming to you from Aotearoa, New Zealand. And to use our lovely Maori descriptor, maranga mai ki te maramatanga, meaning together let us arise to enlightened wisdom, compassion, and understanding. But I want to start by honouring the ancestors of this land. So Ranganui, our Sky Father, Tāne Mahuta, Lord of the forest, the trees, the birds, Tangaroa, God of the seas, and Tawhiri Matia, Lord of the winds. But especially we honour and we pay our respects to our Earth Mother, Papa Tuanuku, she who gives us life, from whence we come, she nourishes us, and eventually to whom we are going to return. Now, as a symbol of our Earth Mother, Papa Tuanuku, I'm just going to show you this lovely piece of greenstone, or punamu as it's called here. Now, punamu was very highly valued by Maori for its durability, for its strength, and for its beauty. And it was often given as gift, and the tradition arose that it was passed down from generation to generation. Now today we could see this Punamu as the earthly embodiment of our Triratna movement. Beautiful, strong, durable. And also a symbol of Bhante's gift to us, a gift given in love, intended to bring enlightenment and peace to the world. So now I would like to light this candle to symbolize Bhante Sangharakshita, our much loved teacher and the founder of the Tri Ratna movement. We dedicate this day to him, connecting with gratitude for his vision in recognizing that a new movement was necessary, and for his generosity in spending his life in bringing this vision into being. Thank you, Bhante. See? And I'd also like to dedicate today to celebrating and giving thanks for all those people who gave their time, their energy, their resources, their youth, to those who moved city, to those who moved countries, to bring Triratna as we know it today into being. Now, a lot of those people have died, but many of them are still here working for Triratna, endeavouring to bring an end to suffering for all people. And we thank and honour them. We also dedicate this day to upholding and enhancing the lineages we have received from Bhante. First of all, the lineage of teaching. Those oceans that bring happiness to all beings. The teachings that we have received and continue to enjoy. And so maybe we take a moment to give thanks in our own hearts for his scholarship and his wisdom. Secondly, the lineage of practice. These have been described by Bhante as all the practices that I have taught, and we are familiar with them. The mindfulness of breathing, the metta bhavana, the six element practice, reflections on the Nidana chain, all these rich practices and many more. And we give thanks. Thirdly, the lineage of inspiration. This is the vision and the inspiration that comes to us from the Buddha, through Bhante, and then down to us through our communication with one another as Sangha. And fourthly, the lineage of institution. Sometimes called the lineage of responsibilities. So the institution and the structures that have evolved as the Triratna movement has evolved and grown. So, as we can see, the spirit of Bhante is alive, vital, and flowing throughout the world. And we see this in the expansion of our movement through Asia, Europe, North and South America, and down under here in Australia and New Zealand. Here in Aotearoa, our wish and our responsibility is to take these gifts and to endeavour to grow them and to take them in new directions, including making our centres more culturally inclusive and diverse. At the beginning of this ceremony, I used our Maori descriptor. And we see the use of this descriptor as a first step in our journey toward becoming a more welcoming place for our Maori and Pacifica brothers and sisters, indeed all people of colour. And I would like to end this part of the dedication ceremony by repeating this call 3 times, remembering what it means. Together, let us arise to enlightened wisdom, compassion, and understanding. Maranga mai ki te maramatanga. Maranga mai ki te maramatanga. Maranga mai ki te maramatanga. Aroa nui, that means love and blessings to all you lovely people, and good night. Back to you, Ratnavyuha.
Thanks, Shraddanitta. Thanks. That was absolutely lovely. That was really gorgeous. I loved. Yep. Yeah, that was gorgeous. It made me think too about you know, one of the conditions of the precious human life is that there were people that were willing to share the Dharma. So it's not only that the Buddha taught and a Buddha arose and that the Dharma is in a form that we can understand and that we've got, you know, the faculty to understand it, but also that other people were willing to take the trouble to teach us, you know, to start centers and stuff like that. And I have to say I'm a direct beneficiary of that. If it wasn't for other people, and the list would be a very long one of people that have offered their lives to make the Dharma available, and therefore I was able to run across Tri Ratna. If they hadn't done that, I wouldn't be here, and many of us wouldn't be here. So big thanks. And a big thanks, Shraddanitta. That was absolutely lovely. So now what we're going to do now is Saddhanandi spoke about in 1975 when Sangharakshita came to New Zealand, but Sangharakshita also came back again in 1979. And in 1975, when he was here, he gave the town hall lectures. And one of the people that was at the town hall lectures was Ujjalamati's mother. And then in 1979, when Bhante came back, he ordained Ujjalamati's mother. And so we've asked Ujjalamati to share with us some reflections on just anything she remembers back from that time. So I'm going to pass it on to Ujjalamati now.
Hello, can you hear me? Kia ora from Te Kapa Moana o Hauraki, or the Firth of Thames in Aotearoa, New Zealand. I'd like to thank the organisers of today for entrusting me with this opportunity to share some of my recollections. And when I agreed, I guess I thought maybe it would be just a little stroll down memory lane. But as I've spent 46 or 7 years growing up within the movement, it turned into a bit of a major reassessment of my life to this point. So thanks for that. I can share, however, that I feel it was time well spent. And yeah, so all right, without further ado, let's dive back to around 1973. Buckle in, it's quite hairy back then. So in 1973 and 4, I was around 8 and 9 years old. My sisters were sort of left home, and my mum was in her early 50s, and my father had died about a few years before, and so my mum was looking for some new direction and meaning in her life. Anyway, one of my sisters went out and contacted this new Buddhist outfit, and it had this very long name of the Friends of the Western Buddhist Order. That's what Triratna was known as back then. However, everyone called it the Friends or the movement. So anyway, so before a public centre was established, I recollect tagging along to meetings around suburban Auckland in various living rooms where people with quite long hair and beards and Indian sort of shirts and stuff would sit cross-legged amongst lounge room furniture, and there'd be these billows of Indian incense and usually a little Buddha figure somewhere centrally located. And sometimes they would listen to taped lectures by this man named Sangharakshita. Sometimes they would do meditation, and sometimes they would do chanting and devotional ritual. And I discovered I really enjoyed meditation. I enjoyed the chanting and the ritual, and I didn't mind the lectures actually sometimes. And I particularly loved the art and the Buddhist iconography. That was something that I really loved. So basically this was me around that time. Not exactly a shrinking violet. Some things don't really change. Now, if you're very observant, you'll see a little photo here on the mantelpiece. That's Sangharakshita. Now, I have a special treat for you. Aniketa, my mum, painted this from that photo. So I have this painting by Aniketa showing what a union of opposites Sangharakshita's appearance presented in the mid-70s. He's got a monk's robe and very unmonk-like hippie hair. He's got National Health glasses. He had terrible teeth, and he had an eye that turned out a little, and sometimes you weren't entirely sure where he was looking or where you should look. But when I met him, I was very struck by, he did have a certain charisma or presence. And I think it was partly his mindfulness training, perhaps in his earlier days. He had a real stillness and deliberation around his movements and his choice of words and his focus. And when he looked at you, he really saw you and he really gave his full attention to you. And that was pretty striking. And I think that's still striking if you ever meet anyone who does that. So I remember when he spoke to me as a child, he did not talk down to me. He spoke to me as one individual to another. And he asked me what I was interested in, and he suggested also that I kind of find out more about Buddhism. So as time went on, so I went to those lectures, and I'll say a bit more about that later. But when he came back in, before we go, when he came back in 1979, this is a picture of the Sangha on retreat around that time. There's Purna here in his olive jumper. So out of that 23 people or so, only Purna is the only one still around the Auckland Sangha. There's a few in the UK, a few in Australia, a few have passed away, unfortunately, and a few still in New Zealand, but only Purna in Auckland. So now, when he came back in 1979, I wasn't allowed to go on retreat yet, but I was allowed to go on the public ordination of my mum and my sister. So there's me on the back of a house truck with Sangharakshita, 1979. I would have been about 14. And on that occasion, you know, I was already thinking ahead about what would I do when I left school and, you know, those sorts of things. He painted a picture for me of his vision of the movement, like a kind of community or world within a world where people could live their whole lives from very young to very old in a rich way, like engaged with Dharma practice and living and working together and playing together. And yeah, he painted a very appealing picture for me. And yeah, safe to say that kind of had quite an impact. When he went away again and left New Zealand, the following year, there was a mass exodus of the New Zealand order to an order convention. So that was 1980. And I was feeling very abandoned. No one had written to me. Those were the days of snail mail. So nothing like this and no email. But I wrote to him and in typically dramatic fashion said that I would have appreciated even a note on a piece of toilet paper. So he sent me this card, which I really love. And it's a little man painting his own rainbow on a blue sky. And I share this because I think it shows a playful kind of kindly aspect of Sangharakshita, which maybe not everyone was privileged to see. So he says, I thought you'd appreciate at least a few lines of acknowledgement. At least I'm not writing on toilet paper. In fact, I hope you like this rainbow card and that it will be a symbol of hope and promise for you for the future, including a visit to England. With much metta, Sangharakshita. So that's pretty special. It still is a symbol of hope. And actually the rainbow crops up again in a little while. So some of my things that I still have from the 70s, thanks to Annie Cater looking after them, is this Buddha rupa that used to just be plain plaster. That was given to me by Sadhumati, who was the eldest member of the Sangha at that time. And he gave me a card saying from the eldest to the youngest. So I have it and I painted it myself. Annie Cater, when she did finally write to me from her convention in England, she says, the versatility of people in the Friends, especially order members, is delightful. 1 minute they're up a ladder painting, the next they are leading meditation and puja, and the next going into abstruse teachings. It's amazing. I'll be going to have tea with Bhante. Bhante really enjoys himself. In fact, I've not seen him so expansive before. So that was 1980. Sangharakshita did write to me on other occasions, but normally I would write to him big long letters, my ins and outs in life, and he would write me back a short note saying, well, whatever you're doing, you know, that just do what you need to do, but don't forget that the situation will be there for you when you need it. That was pretty much the essence of what he said most of the time, and it turned out to be true. Now, I'm going to have to watch the time. So, right, so 1981 changed the course of my life when I met Dharmamati, who will be talking, I believe, a bit later. And he was delayed in Auckland on his way to Australia to help start the Sydney Buddhist Centre. After a hippie music and spirituality festival that we both attended, we formed a relationship. And I ended up following him to Sydney and being involved for, actually I stayed in Australia about 14 years. So I was involved with the Sydney Sangha for a long time. So I have a picture of me probably about 19, 85 or so, 84 maybe, helping paint the George Street Centre when they actually moved to the city. To start with, it was a suburban house, but and that's there's Malini, I think, and Dharmamati on this end, and one of Chittaprabha's daughters on this end, and Paramartha there. So that's in the freshly painted room at George Street in Sydney. I went on my long-awaited trip to the UK in around 1987. And I arrived, luckily, in time to see my sister Ratnamala get ordained. That was kind of luck, really. I didn't know exactly when it would be happening, so that was pretty special. And I got to see Bhante in his flat upstairs at Sukhavati. Took that photo of him enjoying the sunshine. He's a bit more conservatively dressed now, but he's got the nice Doc Marten cherry red shoes there. So I met with him a few times, a couple of times, you know, for a bit longer when I was in the UK. I went to the Croydon Centre. It was a mixed bag. This was the view from my room, a bit grim when you come from Australia or New Zealand, a bit grim. But the community was very lively and there were lots of artists, and that was a retreat. Community retreat we did somewhere in Oxfordshire. And before I went back to Australia, that's a shot of myself and two of my sisters. At one point, all of my sisters were in the order and my mum. I didn't actually get around to being ordained until 2016, so I took my time. But when I went back to Australia, Satya Devi is someone who's always cropped up in my life. She was in Croydon, she was in Sydney, she's been in Thames, she's been everywhere, and she knows everyone, but she's always been very supportive of me. Anyway, my relationship with Dharmamati didn't survive my trip to the UK, and on a retreat, I met this person, which is he became Amritadaka in the year 2000, but that's us on retreat at Vijayaloka in probably about 1989. Run out of time. While I was in Sydney, I went to art school. That's a photo I sent Aniketa from my graduate exhibition. Glass of white wine there, very grown up. And she came over for my graduation ceremony. So that was very cool. And Sangharakshita wrote to me, he was very pleased to hear I'd taken my degree. This is a very nice card, this one. And that I'd been able to redefine myself as an individual outside of the FWBO. Best of all, you are now asking for ordination of your own choice, and I'm delighted that this is the case. Well, that was the first time I asked for ordination, so 1992. A couple of years later, I'd withdrawn it due to technical reasons. But anyway, Aniketa and Bhante, that's when she went to England at Taraloka. They had a pretty good, you know, close, long relationship, friendship. And that's a picture that she would have taken of him, I guess, at that time. That was in the sort of early 90s. Another card, that was a nice card he sent me to wish me well when I wasn't going to go for ordination. Anyway, I went back to Australia. Went back to New Zealand. This is quite hard to compress everything, and I really have to compress it now. That's the crew that worked on building the stupa at Siddharshaloka. That was a very peak experience in my life, like helping build the stupa that has Dada Rinpoche's ashes in it. And in this picture, Sangharakshita was presiding at the inauguration and Aniketa was reading. She sadly passed away in 2002. But she's remained very inspirational to me in my life, and I often reread things, and I've got a lot of her books and Dharma books, which I make sure that I try and make good use of these days. My sisters did all manage to get together once about a year or so in New Zealand after it's Amritadaka. What else can I say? Oh, I might just share this. I wrote to Bhante before I went for my ordination retreat, and I sent this picture of me and Anikata on the Sydney ferry. And I say, "Hi Bhante, from Andrea in Thames, New Zealand. Here is a recording from Anikata. Thought you might enjoy hearing her voice again. She did some great readings and a lot of transcription work actually of Sangharakshita's. I hope you are keeping well. I'm gradually getting ready for September when I will be going to an ordination retreat in Golden Bay, Nelson, New Zealand, where I'll no longer be Andrea. I guess it's been the longest road, having been a Mitra since 1985. Anyway, I must say I've really been enjoying free Buddhist audio, and I think I may volunteer at some point to do recordings or transcripts like Anikata used to, as it's such a great resource. I haven't done that yet, sorry. I was listening to extracts from talks you gave in 1968 and the mid-70s, and they still sound really vibrant and fresh. I'm still pretty involved in Siddhartha Retreat Centre and the Lotus Realm team-based Right Livelihood, and have some involvement in the Little Buddhist Centre in town as well. A small but industrious Sangha here in Thames. I think of you often, Bhante, and wish you health and contentment and liberation. Much love, Andrea Gill, for now." So that was the last letter I wrote. I gather he was quite pleased I'd finally made it into joining the order after those long years. And actually after doing this, just to wind up, and I know I'm over time, that's nothing new either. There were a couple of things that really struck me through this process of recollection. What are they? Oh, yes. So, what I realised is that back in the day, I thought everyone was old. And it was only because I was really, really young at the time. Actually, according to Dhamma Kumara's frightening statistics, most people getting ordained back in the 70s were between 20 and 35 years old. The average age now apparently is 60 or 63 out here in New Zealand and Australia. So that's something that I wanted to presence. And I also wanted to mention something else. In 1979, in the lecture series that Bhante gave on the movement, a new Buddhist movement, he said the movement was new also in the sense of being young. He said that a sign of growing old is indulging in nostalgia, and the old tend to look back to the past, whereas the young tend to look forwards towards the future. So it seemed to me important to kind of recognize if, you know, our movement is aging a bit, we need to expand back out and make sure we're looking after those elders and looking after the young people that are coming on. And to finish up, so I'm sure Ratnavyuha will be very excited, I'm going to finish up now. I feel that Urgyen Sangharakshita's most important blessing to us is the emphasis on working together and practicing together. It's of great importance that we continue that tradition of creating opportunities to live, work, play, study, practice the Dharma together collectively. It's really important for our own transformation, for our collective transformation, and for the transformation of the world. So we can do this interpersonal Dharma practice face-to-face, or we can do it virtually face-to-face with technology. So there's no excuse. The Triratna Buddhist community. Used to be called the Friends of the Western Buddhist Order, and at heart, it's still a network of friends. So wishing you all well in your Dharma life, and let's celebrate our blessings every day. Back to you, Ratnavyuha.
Thanks, Ujjalamati. Thanks. That was really lovely. I love that painting that your mom did. It was kind of with yeah. I thought that's fabulous. Yeah, I really liked it. Quite strong painting too. Quite strong painting. But thank you very much for sharing your life. I was really struck how just, oh wait, I haven't seen that yet.
Sorry, I forgot. It was hidden under the painting. This was given to me when I left the Croydon Centre, which, was a mixed bag, let's be honest. But I broke the gender divide because all the guys signed it as well as all the women. So anyway, anyhow.
Right.
Sorry.
Thanks. That got in there before we cut over to Purna. I was just thinking about how the interwoven threads of our lives too, just like how an 8-year-old child, your life and Bhante's life kind of connected, and really all that he gave you and he's given us. Which is great, and I'm very thankful for, and I really heard your gratitude in there too. So when Bhante was in New Zealand, the other thing that he did do was that he purchased a piece of greenstone. So Shraddanitta kind of introduced us to a little bit of the myth around greenstone. It's got a rich symbolism in New Zealand culture. But when he got back to the UK, he then gave that piece of greenstone to Saddhanandi. And Saddhanandi's decided that is going to be the symbol of the chairmanship at Adhisthana. So later in this session, I believe that greenstone is going to be placed on the shrine at Adhisthana, and Saddhanandi will be leading us in a ritual along those lines. But before we do that, we wanted to give you a little bit of a context for the significance of greenstone in New Zealand culture. And in order to do that, my good friend Purna is going to share with us some of his thoughts. So I'm going to pass it on to Purna now.
Thanks, Ratnavyuha. Both Shraddanitta's introduction and Ujjalamati's talk were quite something. I'm very much celebrating our diversity, a unity in diversity, let's say. Actually, one of the things I was sort of reminded of with Shraddanitta's introduction was something I'd read recently in a Buddhist scripture. It's called the Mahaparinibbana Sutta. And the Buddha's recounting a lifetime spent giving talks, different assemblies, different groupings, different people. And he makes the point that whenever he gave a talk, he took on it's usually translated as the appearance and the voice of who he was with. And the original words are really fascinating, because the word for appearance is actually suvana, is vana or varana, color. He took on the color, and the word for voice was sara or swara, isn't avalokiteshvara. He took on the accent, as it's sometimes called. So he localized himself, despite the universal nature of his message. Presumably when he's in New Zealand, he would have spoken a bit of Maori. He would have accepted the greetings in Maori. He would take on the colour, quite literally. I don't know what that means. It's a quite complex term in Buddhist scriptures. Usually it covers the four main castes, but the translators just simply say it's the skin appearance, or just the appearance, which is an odd thing to take on. Anyway, that's our universe. That's our unity and our diversity. My brief was to talk about Pounamu and give you a bit of background to its significance, the status it carries within New Zealand culture. I've used the word Pounamu, which is the Maori word for greenstone, nephrite jade. It plays as important a part in traditional Maori culture as gold does in European culture. So there's quite a contrast there. The early Maoris valued Pounamu in the same way that Europeans valued gold. They couldn't understand the fixation on gold. As Shraddanitta introduced, it's valued for its strength, its durability, its beauty, but its value far transcended any aesthetic or practical qualities. It was exchanged between chiefs for peacemaking. It was given as a gift. It was considered to have a word that I want to introduce called mana. Status, authority, power, even in some cases, a sort of supernatural force. It had prestige, it had charisma. This is why Pounamu was used to seal bonds of friendship, relationship, peace. It was also given as a gift to express gratitude and thanks. So the idea of gifting it was central. Traditionally, you gift Pounamu. You don't go down a tourist shop and buy yourself some. Or if you do, you're buying it to gift it. There's another very important Maori word associated with Pounamu, and that's the idea of Maori, M-A-U-R-I. It's a multi-use word in this context, meaning life force, vital essence. It paints the picture of Pounamu being a living stone. So when you own Pounamu, when you own a piece of greenstone, the stone is imbued with you, something of you. And you imbue something of the previous owners. So this makes it very appropriate as a gift for the passing on of the chairmanship of Adhisthana or any other use like that. This is a very traditional use of it. Pounamu was traditionally so valued and so durable that it became an heirloom, and it was passed from one generation to another. This idea of Maori or life force, you had to bear in mind that before the days of machinery, a piece of simple jade would have taken a year or more of working with it, carving it, polishing it, rubbing it with quite what we would regard as quite primitive tools. But in that process, that piece of jade or greenstone was imbuing something of the person who carved it. And that would be passed on to somebody else. So you've got this idea of a life energy being passed through not inert matter, but a living rock, a living stone. I am fortunate to own a greenstone mala. This was gifted to me back in 1987. I left New Zealand for a year at that time to go on a variety of retreats and India. Dhamachari Anjali gifted it to me. This is not part of the Pounamu, but she wants her voice heard. She's part of our diversity and our unity. So So this greenstone mala, I have used it over the years for my Green Tara practice, the visualization mantras recitation. Excuse the domesticity, but it's all part of the show. Where was I? One of the things we did in Auckland was when the presidency was passed on from Nagabodhi to Nyanadara, we gifted him with two things, a crystal mala and a greenstone fishhook pendant. The fishhook pendant was traditionally a good luck symbol to carry us safely over water. This is what traditionally the travelers in the great waka or canoes would have carried. We gave this as a gift to Nyanadara because we knew he would have to keep traveling over half a planet of water to get to us in his role as president. The crystal mala, of course, is Avalokiteshvara, the bodhicitta, the 1,000-armed Avalokiteshvara, let's say. So one of the things that Bhante did express about greenstone was that what a pity. You can buy it made into ashtrays, lampstones, and little boxes. This, and as he says, what a pity. I want to leave you just with the thought that Pounamu greenstone carries a life energy. It carries the mana, the status, the prestige of the bearers. And this is what makes it very appropriate. Greenstone is a major conveyor of mana. Thank you.
Thank you, Purna. Thanks for all that, for setting a stage for the well, actually this ceremonial passing on or placement of the gift of the greenstone that Bhante gave to Saddhanandi in the Adhisthana shrine. So before I pass over to Adhisthana, I would just like to say that well, one is we'd love to have you visit New Zealand, so you'd be more than welcome. I think if you came here, you'd both recognize a movement which is similar to what you've come from. You'd recognize us as Tri Ratna, but also you'd notice it's a bit different. It's a bit New Zealand. And I think I always find that the first time I really know I'm back in New Zealand, at least flying into Auckland, is when I'm walking through the arrivals and you pass through these arches and there's bird song, a recording of bird song that's playing in the background, and there's tikis carved into either side of this arch. And I always know as I pass through, it's very, very mythic. It's a very mythic island, this one. This island's rich in symbolism, rich in myth, rich in energy, really, energy. And Pounamu and the mana that Pounamu carries is part of that rich tradition. So I would welcome you, and but until that day, post-COVID, because our borders are closed at the moment, unless you're a New Zealand citizen or a permanent resident, you can't actually come into the country. Although some people were lucky enough to get stuck here, like dear Papa. So, and we're very pleased she got stuck here too, by the way. But now I'm going to pass it back to Saddhanandi at Adhisthana Shrine Room. And just want to say thank you once again to Shraddanitta, to Ujjalamati and Purna. Those were excellent presentations, and I really appreciate that. And best wishes to all of you on this day. And sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Saddhanandi.
Thank you, Ratnaguna. Thank you, Ratnavyuha. And Ujjalamati, it's just fantastic seeing those photographs. And I recognize a lot of people. I know your sisters, I think I took your mum, Annie Ketu, and Ratnashuri on solitary. I wonder if they went and stayed in Sudaya's house. Anyway, two very eccentric older ladies going on a duet solitary retreat together. My God, what a laugh. And they would sort of entertain themselves with their various stories and their unusualness. I think they both brought out more and more unusualness in each other. So it was really fantastic to hear. I had a blast of you and your teachings and your energy. Really beautiful. Thank you. And thank you all for that lovely dedication ceremony. And Shraddanitta, thank you for just holding that space so beautifully. Thank you. Yes, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my interview with Bhante, where we talked about this poem, The Greenstone. And it was happening maybe around about this time of the year. And I was interviewing him on a number of objects that belong to different decades. And this belonged to this piece of greenstone, which he eventually gave me, belonged to his 6th decade, and it's when he did a lot of traveling. So we also, we also talked about this vase from the Netherlands and a sandalwood garland from India. And he just did a lot of traveling then. He was very active. I mean, actually, a lot of his decades, he was very, very active and had different stories and different. There was a different atmosphere to each decade, actually, which was very striking. So if you imagine, I'd gone to see Bhante, it was 9:30 in the morning, and we always did these interviews at 9:30, only the night before the clocks had changed. So in Britain, we just sprung forward by an hour. So it was actually 8:30 in the morning. And I wasn't totally convinced he would want to do the interview, given how early it was from our body clock, as it were. Anyway, he was always very punctual, and he always sort of stuck to his arrangements. So I went in, said, "Hi, Bhante, it's Saddhanandi," and he always shook my hand. I always had cold hands. He always had hot hands. So he would always comment on this. He would always say, cold hand, Saddhanandi. And then we'd be pleased to see each other, and I'd sit down, I said to him, "Do you really want to do this?" And he said, "Yes." And he said, "Why not?" And I said, "But it's 8:30 in the morning, Bhante, it's 8:30 in the morning." He said, No, it's fine, Saddhanandi, we just do it, it's fine. I said, "Okay." And he said, "So, the first thing I want us to do is rehearse this poem, Greenstone." I said, "Oh, okay." So I said, "I've got a copy." I had a copy with me. He said, "I've got a copy too." So he gives it to me. So I read it. Greenstone. This is 8:30 in the morning, remember. And off I went with the poem. At the end, he's like, "It needs to be a bit more dramatic, Saddhanandi." I'm saying, "For goodness sake, what are you like? It's 8:30 in the morning, Bhante." He said, "I know." He said, and I said, "I forget what it's like to work with you sometimes." He said, "You just have to work with me more often, Saddhanandi." So this was the start of that interview. And we built up quite a strong rapport throughout all those interviews. They took quite a lot of preparation on my side. They didn't seem to take very much preparation on his side, but I think they probably did. And we would meet, we would go through the interview a little bit, and then a few days later we would do the actual interview, which was recorded and which you now can hear on Free Buddhist Audio. Yeah, so he talked a lot about then his time in Australia and in New Zealand. And so this was the poem that I read out to him. And as you've heard quoted from Purna already, this is how it goes. And actually, as it's 6 o'clock in the morning, please excuse if I'm not as dramatic as it needs to be done. Greenstone. High in the mountains, up creeks, between slopes densely tree-covered, in the beds of ancient streams stand the boulders. Split them open, and they are pure green, spinach green, apple green, and sea green. The Maoris carved neck amulets and gleaming translucent fishhooks out of the pure green stone, and polished buttons for great personages to hold on ceremonial occasions. Tourists can buy it, made into ashtrays, lampstands, and little boxes. What a pity. So many months later, after we'd done that interview, and after we'd finished all the interviews, he had his birthday, his 90th birthday at Adhisthana, and we had a big combined order weekend there to celebrate it. And a few months after that, he asked to see me again. So we saw each other quite regularly, and he asked to see me again, and he said to me, Saddhanandi, I want to give you something. I want to give you something for those interviews. And he gave me this piece of greenstone. Here it is. And he said, I want to give you the greenstone. Yeah. And he said, I wanted to give you something which I myself had bought and wasn't given to me by somebody else. I think that was partly his respect for the other people, but also partly his respect for me, that he'd know if he gave me something that had been given to him by somebody else, I would always worry that that person would feel bad about it, or that I would meet someone and they would know I'd been given something that they'd given him. So he wanted to give me something that he bought himself. And I knew something of the significance of this greenstone and the Maori tradition. And I think I always sort of took it as him giving me a gesture of him giving me confidence. He knew that I lacked confidence at times, and he was trying to give me a blessing of confidence, his confidence in me, and for me to have confidence in myself. Maybe at that moment, from one chief to another, saying, yes, Saddhanandi, you can do this, and this is the rock that will be behind you to do it. Yeah. So then I've kept it with me, obviously, in my room. And not many people see it. Suddenly everyone's seeing it, but not many people see it. And then a year or so ago, when I was attending some community days here at Adhisthana, I decided that it actually belittled the stone itself if I kept it to myself. It needed to be sort of handed over into something that was much bigger than just me as a person. And really it should be handed on to the person that became the chair at Adhisthana the next time. That it could just become, if you like, the symbol of the chairmanship, but also the symbol of Adhisthana. And I talked about that in the community and said that this is now what we don't have anything at Adhisthana that we're going to hand on from one person to another through the generations, as Purna said. And why not allow this to be it? And Saddaloka said this very beautiful thing. He said, it's a very open symbol. A stone is a very open symbol, and maybe it's important and appropriate that at the heart of Adhisthana we have such an open symbol. It can become anything that it needs to become. So yes, stone has its own different kind of archetypes, doesn't it? You have the stone of the healer, the stone of the mystic, the stone of the magician, the royal stone, so the alchemical stone, so all of this, and then you have the green stone, the stone of the Maoris, and all that kind of universal archetype of that image now can just become part of Adhisthana. And hopefully all of us as a whole community, international community, will help create Adhisthana as its own greenstone, in a way, as its own kind of presence, and give it its own voice that it needs to be as part of this community. So what are we going to do now? Have I done everything I was supposed to do? Let me think. I think what we'll do now is we'll just, here in the shrine of Adhisthana, we're going to rearrange ourselves so we can actually do the actual dedication ceremony that Sangharakshita wrote for the first meditation class that he held in Monmouth Street, or first time they opened the centre in Monmouth Street. So we'll do that, and I'll just set myself up to lead the dedication ceremony. And at the end of that, I will put the stone into the hands of the Buddha here. And maybe after that, Yashadeva, would you mind starting the Shakyamuni mantra? Yeah. And we'll just chant the Shakyamuni mantra. And I think that will be the end of everything. And then I'll ring a bell at the end of that mantra, and that'll be the end. And then we can just sort of go informal. For those of you that want to stick around and just say hello to everyone, you can, but we'll do something. We'll let these guys sort of step out of the ritual and just do a slightly more informal ending. Okay, so we're just going to shuffle about, right? Okay, so I'm just checking in with the tech. I think I'm going to do this. Oh, how am I going to do this? I'm going to. So maybe I should introduce it. Yeah. So we're just going to hear a short clip of Bhante talking about him starting the centre, okay, in the dedication ceremony. And then I'll read something of that, his account of that day from his diary, and then we'll do the dedication ceremony.
Those classes started actually with the dedication ceremony that you had written that day.
Yes, that's true. I'd forgotten that. But the day before, I thought we needed some kind of dedication ceremony. So I had a little inspiration, and I sat down and wrote one. And we used it, we dedicated, or we called it the Tri Ratna Meditation Center and Shrine. Some people called it Shrine and Meditation Center. But yes, we did dedicate using that ceremony which I devised. And I believe we still use that ceremony whenever we create a new center. I'm very glad it's still in use.
Yes, still very much in use,
Yeah.
yes. And it's interesting that on that first dedication ceremony, it was the word Triratna that was used.
Yes.
So here we are back with the word Triratna as a description.
And this is what Bhante writes about that occasion. Monmouth Street was situated in the heart of London's West End, midway between Charing Cross Road on the one hand and Drury Lane and Covent Garden on the other. It was a narrow street of small, seedy shops, a cafe or two and a hotel. Sakura, the Japanese shop, was located halfway down on the right as one looked towards Trafalgar Square. Previous to my departure for India, I had visited the place only once. This was in the summer of 1965, when I discovered that its proprietor had been attending my lectures at the Hampstead Vihara. But after my return, I was often there, sometimes with Terry, and the little shop was the scene of many a discussion between me and the cheerful, loyal Emile. The most important of these discussions, perhaps, was the one that took place 2 days after the EGM, when we discussed the formation of a meditation group. But where would the group meet? A new Buddhist movement might indeed be needed in England, but such a movement was as yet only an idea, even a dream. It had no premises of its own and was not likely to have for years to come. But Emile had already given thought to the matter. Sakura had a basement, he explained. Perhaps the meditation group could meet there. The basement proved to be small and dark and full of junk, but I thought it might serve our purpose, at least for the time being. And Emile undertook to ask his landlord if we could rent it from him. 4 days later, it was ours, and Emile and a few friends at once set about transforming the place into a shrine and meditation centre. On Thursday, the 6th of April, 1967, in the intervals between other work, I composed a kind of service for the dedication of the new shrine and meditation room, which was to take place that evening. Succinct as ever, my diary describes the occasion in these words. At 6:10, drove to the Vihara with Terry. Picked up Tien Chow and Jack Ireland, down at Sakkara soon after at 6:30. Put finishing touches to shrine. Function started at 7, spoke for 15 minutes, then all recited dedication together, followed by sevenfold puja. Finally, 20 minutes meditation, finished 8 o'clock, very good atmosphere, more than 24 people present by invitation, including Jack Austin and Graham Petchley, Anne Lobston, Mrs. Phillips, Kimwell, gave Ten Chow and Vivian a lift back. The establishment of the Tri Ratna Shrine and Meditation Room marked the birth of the Friends of the Western Sangha, which was to become, with the founding of the Western Buddhist Order a year later, the Friends of the Western Buddhist Order. The new Buddhist movement was no longer just an idea, much less still only a dream. It had begun to be a reality. So we'll do the dedication ceremony as he did in that evening, that first evening. In call and response, the dedication ceremony. We dedicate this place to the three jewels.
We dedicate this place to the three jewels.
To the Buddha.
To the Buddha.
The ideal of enlightenment to which we aspire.
The ideal of enlightenment to which we aspire.
To the Dharma.
To the Dharma.
The path of the teaching which we follow.
the path of the teaching which we follow,
to the Sangha,
to the Sangha,
the spiritual fellowship with one another which we enjoy,
the spiritual fellowship with one another which we enjoy.
Here may no idle word be spoken.
Here may no idle word be spoken.
Here may no unquiet thought disturb our minds.
Here may no unquiet thought disturb our minds.
To the observance of the 5 precepts,
To the observance of the 5 precepts,
we dedicate this place.
we dedicate this place.
To the practice of meditation,
To the practice of meditation,
we dedicate this place.
we dedicate this place.
To the development of wisdom,
To the development of wisdom,
we dedicate this place.
we dedicate this place.
To the attainment of enlightenment,
To the attainment of enlightenment,
we dedicate this place.
we dedicate this place.
Though in the world outside there is strife,
Though in the world outside there is strife,
here may there be peace.
here may there be peace.
Though in the world outside there is hate,
Though in the world outside there is hate,
here may there be love.
here may there be love.
Though in the world outside there is grief,
Though in the world outside there is grief,
here may there be joy.
here may there be joy.
Not by the chanting of the sacred scriptures,
Not by the chanting of the sacred scriptures,
not by the sprinkling of holy water,
not by the sprinkling of holy water,
but by our own efforts towards enlightenment,
but by our own efforts towards enlightenment,
we dedicate this place.
we dedicate this place.
Around this mandala, this sacred spot,
Around this mandala, this sacred spot,
may the lotus petals of purity open.
may the lotus petals of purity open.
Around this mandala, this sacred spot,
Around this mandala, this sacred spot,
may the Vajra wall of determination extend.
may the Vajra wall of determination extend.
Around this mandala, this sacred spot,
Around this mandala, this sacred spot,
may the flames that transmute samsara into nirvana arise.
may the flames that transmute samsara into nirvana arise.
Here seated,
Here seated,
here practicing,
here practicing,
may our mind become Buddha.
may our mind become Buddha.
May our thought become Dharma.
May our thought become Dhamma.
May our communication with one another be Sangha.
May our communication with one another be Sangha.
For the happiness of all beings.
For the happiness of all beings.
For the benefit of all beings.
For the benefit of all beings.
With body, speech and mind.
With body, speech and mind.
We dedicate this place.
We dedicate this place. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha.
Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha.
Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. So that's the end of this opening ceremony for this year's Tri Ratna Day. Thank you for joining us, and the next session will be a meditation, a Buddha Nasati led by Yashadeva in 90 minutes. We're going to go off and have... No.
25 minutes.
Oh, 20, God, I'm sorry, 25 minutes, I take it all back, gosh. I'm going off for a little coffee. They're all staying here and doing a meditation. But thank you very much for joining us, and it's been fantastic seeing you all. From Zoe from Singapore, Fee from Glasgow, and everybody from Auckland and Australia, so New Zealand, and so thank you very much for joining us. It's been great, thank you. And thank you for Ratnavyuha for holding the whole thing. Thank you.